Hey, welcome to the last 7 days. I'm Brian Spellman.
And I'm Andrew Sparrow.
And this is the time where we just take a few moments to discuss what's happened over the past week in aerospace and defense and how having a well planned PLM solution is going to make the difference between success and failure.
Before we talk about what's coming up, I'm just going to say, backed by popular demand, maybe our demand, maybe you and me saying, we need to do this again. We need to get going. Coupled with, I was at the
Popular
Farnborough,
demand of two.
yeah, the demand of two. I was coupled with 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. It was last week. Time flies, as they say. Forgive the pun. Farnborough International Air Show. I was there. What a difference 2 years has made. 2 years ago, there was like A330s doing loops and all sorts of things in 100-degree plus heat. This time around was F-15, F-16. I think it was a flyover from a B-2. They got a C-130 gunships. It was military. It was defense. There was lots going on in space. Kind of 2 years of transition, and then and there's still massive demand in aviation. Don't get me wrong, but what is going on in defense and space? And I said, we got to get back. Let's get back. Let's see
Yeah.
what's going on in the world today. So, without further ado, as they say, coming up, we've got GE Aerospace, we've got Embraer, RTX, Curtiss-Wright, Honeywell Aerospace, Boeing, Kongsberg, Airbus, and of course, Lockheed Martin.
GE Aerospace was just tapped to support Sierra Nevada with the U.S. Air Force survivable airborne. You know what? We're starting off with tongue twisters with the U.S. Air Force survivable airborne operations. GE Aerospace has been selected by Sierra Nevada to contribute to the overhaul and upgrade of the Gen X-2B engines that are powering the U.S. Air Force Survivable Airborne Operations Center. The GE Aerospace will support various activities leading up to the SAOC aircraft delivery. This is a multi-year effort. There are more than 3,000 Gen X engines delivered or on order. The Gen X family is the fastest selling, highest thrust engine in GE Aerospace history. It's accumulated more than 52 million flights since it entered service in 2011. And it's got proven performance for the Boeing 787, the 747, and has a 99.98% dispatch rate, which is 3 times higher time on wing than any of its competitors.
Yeah, I know it's just really big for GE, and I know we've got a couple of things to talk about on GE. But for me, how do you minimize that disruption to ongoing operations while integrating this new technology? That to me is a big challenge in the product lifecycle.
Yeah, when we look at that, I think one of the biggest things that we always try to start with are training. If you're going to be integrating anything new into something that's existing, you've got to have a
Right.
comprehensive training program for the maintenance, for the operation personnel, for everything that's going to need to have to happen so that everybody's just ready to go once this hits the ground or hits the air.
And this is where we kind of bring in your AR, your VR stuff, whether that's the headset, whether that's the projected VR stuff going on onto your kind of sheet metal to undo your bolts, etc. Good stuff, all part of the digital thread, the critical thread, making sure that's integrated from your designs all the way through.
Yeah, we've seen AR, augmented reality, and virtual reality shown for how they're useful in training programs. And it's also great to watch these with technical support, where you can see how you can integrate that in to give ongoing technical support resources, address issues that arise during any of these transition periods.
Yep. So, and I guess lastly, that whole real-time monitoring you're going to need, right, to make sure that, again, minimizes disruption of new technology coming in. Also coming up, GE announced as well, continuing with that whole news, business is really kind of booming for GE right now. They've got a global surge in demand that's affecting them as well. So the demand for fighter jets, helicopters, GE Aerospace engines power key aircraft, of course, including the Lockheed Martin F-16, Boeing P-8, Maritime Patrol Jet, the Sikorsky UH-60 utility helicopter, and last but no means least, Boeing AH-64E attack rotorcraft. So Amy Gowder, who's CEO of GE Aerospace Defense and Systems business, noticed the significant and production and export opportunities in the US and internationally. And that's what we're seeing, just these huge defense budgets rising. I was shocked to realize that even Japan has increased their budgets by over 15, I think it's 16% this year, because of kind of ongoing threats in the region, so to speak. Anyway, back to GE. GE has also secured propulsion contracts for major new programs, such as Turkey's TAI Khan fighter jet, Korea's KAI KF-21 stealth fighter, and Boeing's T-7A jet trainer for the Air Force, U.S. Air Force. Over this year, GE delivered the first T901 improved turbo engines, set to modernize U.S. Black Hawks and Apaches, with full production expected by 2030. Companies reinvesting revenues from its robust backlog into next generation products, focusing on additive manufacturing and advanced materials like ceramic matrix composites.
You just listed off a lot of really cool and impressive programs. Like this is a lot of stuff happening. This is a diverse, expanding portfolio.
Yeah.
How can GE make sure and on these programs with all these different companies, make sure there's seamless integration, continuous improvement, and that the quality is still there when you're expanding this massively?
Let me hit quality right out the gate. I think quality consistently, when we get with customers, we talk manufacturing. How do you monitor that quality on the lines? What are your quality gates? What's your QMS system to monitor all that? For us, quality, absolutely, that's your last chance saloon to get it right. But it starts right back at the start of the product lifecycle, doesn't it? So it's very much capturing those requirements and then embedding quality from day one, and then really bringing rigorous tracking, documentation, improving quality activities from the start, managing certifications, qualifications, of course, at the end, but it's in readiness for that, and making sure you got your audit trails, your traceability, to ensure that we're meeting those industry standards consistently, end-to-end product lifecycle.
This seems like one of those times where a acronym makes sense. IIoT, so the Industrial Internet of Things, is something that I could see being super useful here. Use this to track everything you just talked about, and then use this to give a real-time operational data, improving the future, improving the current performance, looking at the maintenance, repair, overhaul. Like, so much can happen here, and this technology that we have access to now, that companies can use now, that is still relatively new as far as all the usage you can get from being able to just monitor, everything.
Yeah, I think to wrap that up, I think quality never stops, does it? It starts at the start and it never stops, because you're right, you embed your IoTs, you can do it on your manufacturing lines, but more importantly, you embed it into your product itself. So it's constantly feeding back for quality issues. That loop is coming back into engineering. So you're right, IIoT is another great solution to embed for improvement of quality and scalability.
Yeah, it all shows how this entire product lifecycle management really works together, because you started with looking at manufacturing. We're talking about then how the data from that and everything ties together with IIoT and pulling into the operations and maintenance. It just gives us an idea of how we can have a good proactive lifecycle management, really leverage all of these data analytics to monitor the performance, let us identify issues that are going to happen before they happen and when they're happening, optimize the operations, and just keep having just the proactive approach here. It's some cool stuff. Embraer is going to supply 6 A-29 Super Tucano attack aircraft to Paraguay. Now, when we talk about aerospace and defense, we don't normally think about Paraguay, right? But this is actually pretty interesting. So Embraer is delivering 6 of these aircraft to the Paraguayan Air Force as part of a deal that was just signed during the air show that you were just at. The aircraft are going to provide operational flexibility for conducting armed reconnaissance and close air support missions. They're going to start delivery in 2025 with these aircraft that have 2 50 caliber machine guns and state-of-the-art technologies for precise target identification. The acquisition is going to help the service safeguard Paraguay's territorial integrity and, of course, sovereignty over their airspace, and also help with the current and emerging threats such as drug trafficking and transnational organized crime.
Yeah, yeah. I figured. I mean, it's pretty mountainous region. It's got a lot of hiding places, hasn't it? Really. So it doesn't surprise me that it's having to kind of deal with those issues. I think it's a common. It's similar to what we were talking about on the GE last piece, which is how do we bring this new technology into perhaps a somewhat antiquated environment in Paraguay? So again, how do we seamlessly integrate? How do we get operational readiness of these new systems?
Yeah, one thing we keep noticing is, you're bringing something new into an existing program, and so
Yep.
you, of course, have your plan of how it's supposed to work, but you got to make sure that everybody who's going to be using it knows how it's supposed to work. So we're back to that whole comprehensive training. You need your pilots trained, you need your crew trained, you need your maintenance trained. You need
Yep.
to show how you're going to use this and have that training needs to basically be a specific training program designed for your users, because these are folks who are coming from different systems, different aircraft going into a new one, right? So you have to make
Yeah.
sure that they understand those transitions. I think it's a great opportunity for simulation-based training here. You can use simulators to provide the realistic training scenarios and to let people practice without risking the actual equipment.
Yeah. The other thing that strikes me is that you're going to have MRO. You're going to have to maintain these aircraft. Unless Embraer's giving them a maintenance as a service, which I suspect they're not, the Paraguayans are going to have to manage these Super Tucano attack aircraft themselves, which means good service bill of materials in that whole bill of material critical thread piece. Then they're going to have to collaborate with their new suppliers, more than likely, because they're going to need new parts. So I think that's something. So the whole supply chain management, supplier collaboration, SBOM, MRO solution needs to be really tight and ready to roll as well for them.
Yeah.
The next big one, big one. So NATO, I think, I mean, if you combine the countries, it's the second largest defense budget globally today. So NATO had this summit. It highlighted defense deals for RTX, Boeing, and others. A $680 million contract for 940 Stinger missiles made by RTX's Raytheon unit addresses the high demand in Ukraine and neighboring European countries fearing Russian assault. So RTX's Raytheon and MBDA secured a $5.5 billion contract for the Patriot GEM-T missiles, with NATO supporting a group of member countries, including Germany and Spain, to buy up to 1,000 missiles. Various companies, including General Dynamics, GD, have received a $365 million order for 155 millimeter artillery shell components to meet Ukraine's pressing need for ammunition. Boeing, Leonardo, Indra, Airbus, Thales, Jacobs, and Kongsberg are extending NATO AWACS airborne radar program for $1.2 billion. This Ukraine thing is costing a lot of money, and it's obviously sharpening and modernizing NATO equipment and systems. But boy, this thing is huge. In addition, there were highlighted co-production agreements. Norway's Nammo and RTX's Raytheon will partner to build rocket motors for NATO. Saab and Boeing's ground-launched smaller diameter bomb has been successfully used in Ukraine. Poland's, I'm going to mispronounce this, Voskała Zaglady Elektroniksin, okay, I'm sorry, Poles, about that, will produce portions of interceptors for Lockheed Martin's Patriot missile defense system, and with Poland securing a $2 billion foreign military financing loan for U.S. defense equipment. Wow.
These are some impressive deals. The numbers you're throwing around, I guess, yeah, lots of money being spent on the war effort. But the number one challenge when you're looking at the product lifecycle terms for managing and integrating complex data streams from the design through the MRO, it's super complex. And I think the complexity can actually slow down the entire process and lead to inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Unless you have found a way to work around this. Do you think this is an area for AI, for MBSE?
This is an area for absolutely everything in the critical thread, the whole digital thread. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about everything that needs doing for all of these countries, for all of these defense manufacturers. It really is end to end. There's contracts being done. There are deadlines being set. There is quality being agreed. Now you got to deliver. Boy, oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I mean, I can. Should we do an hour on manufacturing, or should we do a design and engineering conversation for now? It really speaks to the total critical thread. So number one, design and change, isn't it? That's the first thing you've got to get done. Your CAD management, your change management, because there's going to be numerous customizations, configurations for different deals. Then you got to get your product value validation and simulation underway.
Yeah, you're looking at having the modeling and simulation tools that are the state of the art versions here, right? Like that you've got to have good stuff. You've got to be able to use the advanced modeling to virtually test and validate, to integrate your simulation results into the digital thread to help with your design decisions, to help with your traceability, give you the feedback loops and establish these loops for your detailed design, your manufacturing data, your conceptual system models, just to make sure that you've got continuous involvement and continuous improvement across the entire process.
And none of the organizations we just spoke about of what we call a Tesla vertically integrated model, i.e. they do it all themselves. They've then got supply chains. So supplier collaboration needs to start day one, making sure they're all geared up and ready to deliver the design, the configurations, the timelines, the quality. So supply chain management integration on all of this is huge as well. So collaborative platforms got to go in place. We would embed that, make sure your suppliers are in there with their relevant authority levels, making sure your logistics system is integrated into that whole MRP process. Demand forecasting, talking of MRP, and production planning, pulling out into your mess mob. Bryan, it goes end to end. We're not even talking maintenance. I mean, we can add that in there. So this is enormous. What a world we live in today. It is pretty active, unfortunately for the wrong reasons, but it is what it is. And we have to respond and step up and be ready to defend.
And one thing that we tend to not really think about when we're going through the entire process, like you just talked about here, is the actual servers and equipment and technology that are storing all of this data. So another big piece of news that's happened in the aerospace and defense world in the past 7 days is that Curtiss-Wright has just debuted a rack mount 100 GBE secure data at rest storage and recording solution with deep learning support. Now, this is actually pretty interesting. Besides having 100 gigabyte of Ethernet GBE ports with the secure data at rest storage, this is something that is going to support both the National Security Agency Type 1 and commercial solutions for classified 2-level encryption. So encrypted data here. And we know that modern military intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, all of this, they're generating large amounts of highly sensitive data that's got to be captured and securely and quickly stored without impacting the performance. You've got to make sure that this is protected data and is available for the post-mission analysis, for a fast turnaround, for the speeds. I mean, there's so much going into this that I think we often just kind of gloss over and think, yeah, we've got data, it's great, but the idea of how we're actually using this is a huge.
I mean, the biggest challenge for me on this one is going to be of highly sophisticated storage solutions. How does it maintain your data integrity? How does it maintain that security across diverse and potentially extremely hostile environments? I mean, how are you going to deal with that?
Because you've got to make sure your quality is great, no matter where this data is coming from or being stored. And these could be environments that are not necessarily the best for computer equipment. So figuring out that quality, that testing, when you're going through a process like this, you still got to make sure that you've got, it touches on, as we keep saying, I guess, over and over again, it really actually touches on the entirety of your critical thread process.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. You've got the extreme cold of a Ukraine to a heat of an Israel, all of these different geos around the world, hostile environments, just natural hostility as well. Yeah, you're right. And then you got to manufacture it and maintain that quality, maintain that integrity as well. So that manufacturing solution, that MES, needs to be super good. Make sure you've got your IoT layer in there between your MES with your level 2 as well, to make sure you're monitoring everything, feed everything back to maintain that quality as well. So yeah, big stuff.
Yeah.
So also backed by popular demand, and this is my vote. I'm going to go for it. Remember that weapon of the week that we used to have? Well, it's back.
We had what, weapon of the week
back.
A, weapon of the week B, and C. What are we up to now?
We have an A. There's a close run in B as well, I've got to be honest. So Hanwha Aerospace, who I think are, correct me if I'm wrong, guys over in Korea, 12th or 13th largest aerospace business in the world, starts producing the Block I laser weapon. South Korean firm Hanwha Aerospace began production of a new anti-aircraft laser weapon on July 11, according to the country's Defense Acquisition Program Administration, DARPA. Their version. This follows a late June contract with Hanwha Aerospace to produce laser-based anti-aircraft weapon Block I for the Republic of Korea Armed Forces. The contract, valued at about 100 billion Korean won, which is $70 million, there or thereabouts, will see deliveries in late 2024. They got themselves together. That's not long now. So DARPA described the Block I as a new concept future weapon system that uses a light source laser from an optical fiber to neutralize targets. It can precisely strike small UAVs and multi-copters at close range. It's silent, of course, requires no ammunition, and operates with electricity. The cost per firing is about Korean won 2,000, which is I think about $1, something like that. With improved output, it could respond to aircraft and ballistic missiles, potentially playing a game-changing role on future battlefields.
So as of today, that converts to $1.46 per firing.
Pretty good guess.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So this
40% off.
Yeah, I mean, if you do a lot of them, you're going to go over budget there. No, this is fantastic. Like this is a cool weapon of the week. With lasers being weapons is something that we grew up watching in sci-fi, and this actually being something that like this is fascinating stuff. And there's a lot that's gone into just the idea of being able to actually make a weaponized laser. Here we're looking at integration of advanced systems into existing defense infrastructures without causing disruption. So I think that quality is going to be a big aspect here of how do you integrate this into those existing systems. We're going to look at requirements traceability and change management. We're going to need to, it pops up everywhere. The one thing that doesn't change, right, is change management. We have to look at the traceability for establishing strong requirements, or requirements traceability from your concept through the deployment to ensure that everything has these functional requirements are going to be met. You got to utilize the integrated change management process to track and manage the modifications and those changes, and just to make sure there's good adaptation into existing systems.
And again, it's similar to what we're talking about on Embraer going into Paraguay. You're bringing in new technology into an environment, so therefore you're going to have to simulate. In this case, before embed. So I think that whole simulation and virtual testing is critical to this. That needs to be done before deployed. You don't want to have that physical thing. It's going to be expensive. So get it done in the simulation, in your virtual environments, giving that feedback. And then, of course, you've got your supply chain that needs to be ready to roll once again. Real-time data sharing, supply chain management, logistics information, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot happening. I think you did okay with your choosing of the weapon of the week, but we'll see if there are any contenders that show up before we finish the show.
The close runner.
Yeah, after a year of intensive negotiations, the U.S. Air Force and Boeing have come to terms to build 2 rapid prototypes of the E-7 Wedgetail. The E-7 Wedgetail, it's based off of Boeing's 737-700ER. of the 737 next gen family,
So
and
it's
they're
like surveillance, recon, that kind of thing, yeah?
yeah, the Wedgetail has actually been flying already for Australia, South Korea, Turkey, and there's now orders for the United Kingdom. But of course, because America's got to be special, the U.S. Air Force has their own requirements, which have driven up the cost. And yeah, it took a year of negotiations to finally reach an agreement, and they say that they haven't quite finalized the contract. They're expecting to do that sometime this month. The U.S. Air Force wanted a lot of changes to the E-7A Wedgetail with non-recurring engineering, which meant that getting a final price from Boeing to the Air Force that the Air Force could afford was difficult. There were cost drivers that made this cost more than UK's version, which were open system missions architecture, improved satellite communications, enhanced GPS, and all of which are going to be part of the baseline of the Wedgetail going forward past this program. Now, the open mission systems architecture is going to allow each piece of equipment to share data with the other pieces of equipment easier. So whenever you have, let's say, a new display that's needed for something, right? The display is going to easily accept the radar data, even if it's a new piece of equipment. It's got this open mission systems architecture, so everything can communicate and interchange nicely.
Yeah, I was going to me, it's open. So it's open. That's great. That's a good start, isn't it? To me, the seamless integration of all of these new technologies with an existing 737 is going to be the biggest challenge in the product lifecycle. How you blend the two together. How do we deal with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you've got, well, blending it together. You mentioned your comprehensive simulations. Something else that's going to be happening is this is a rapid prototyping program. So you've got to have a really good plan for your iterative prototyping to be able to introduce and test the new technologies, ensure they all function, as you mentioned, seamlessly within the overall system, which means we need to have cross-functional collaboration, integrated development teams, and continuous feedback loops. Like, all the stuff that we keep harping on is arguably more important when you have something that's got to be a fast, rapid prototyping program to get all this stuff ready to go.
Yeah. Design and change as well, etc. So, okay. Here's. I think it's the second. This is a close runner-up to Weapon of the Week. I got to say, Kongsberg has received $141 million deal to develop supersonic missiles. They have secured this $141 million contract for the initial development of the Tierfing supersonic strike missile, aka 3SM, for Germany and Norway, set to complement Kongsberg's naval strike missile. The 3SM will be deployed on future vessels from 2035, so a little way off. Mm-hmm. Kongsberg is the leading industry partner, collaborating with German and Norwegian firms, including Deo Defense, MBDA Deutschland, Norwegian Defense Research Establishment, and NAMO once again. So, though the specific technical details remain undisclosed, and an illustrative concept suggests the missile will use advanced solid fuel ramjet propulsion, a result of the Norwegian-US Thor ER initiative. So Thomas Gottschild, the managing director of MBDA Deutschland, emphasized the importance of standoff weapons for credible deterrence and defense, highlighting the strength this partnership will bring to Norway, German, and European armed forces.
So I think you named 5 different firms and 3 different armed forces. So you're going to have a challenge here of looking at these cross-national, cross-company collaboration and be able to integrate these technologies from multiple countries. We're looking at, well, requirements management first off, right? Like, how do we make a good requirements manage? Anybody who's dealing with multiple countries and multiple companies knows you're going to have a big requirements management need here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But even before that, let's just talk about an infrastructure for collaboration just for a moment. The start of the product lifecycle. You're going to need the Google Docs, oversimplifying it for this kind of missile weaponry, cross-country, cross-organizational collaboration. You need a collaborative environment where you can real-time monitor requirements, designs, engineering. So that would be the first thing for me, so that all the nations and all the organizations can collaborate in real time concurrently, not sequentially. So that would be the first thing that we would do. Unified digital thread, in other words, standardized protocols, get those agreed up front as well.
Now, with this, you said it's a supersonic strike missile. So that means that it booms before it booms.
I guess it booms and then booms again. And then just as you go, oh, crap, it then it goes a third boom.
Yeah, this the idea to create this. I mean, I guess having a super fast missile that you hear after it hits you is something that is definitely a military advancement. And in creating this, you got to have a lot of simulation and testing. And testing is always interesting for things that go boom, because you have to be really careful when you test them. So I think we're looking at, and you're testing across all these different areas we talked about. So joint simulation environments, where we can have all the parties able to test and validate their components in maybe a virtual space to ensure compatibility and performance before the actual physical integration happens, before we even get to physical testing. And in this whole process with the simulation and physical, we got to have iterative testing and great feedback. These continuous feedback loops are going to help to address issues hopefully early and refine the strategies going forward.
And just to finish it off immediately, so project management as well. So when you've got your collaborative environment, you've got all your simulation feedback loops coming in, you need a project management tool that is embedded with all of that, not siloed from it, where you're going to have to manually drag into a project management schedule. So you need a integrated project management tool and oversight.
Now, I'm not sure if you remember, but maybe 3 or 4 minutes ago, I mentioned that there was a contract between Boeing that hadn't yet been signed. Like Boeing they made the plans, but they're going to sign sometime this month. Well, Airbus has now been awarded a contract to Airbus Helicopters to lead a concept study in the frame of the next generation rotorcraft capability, the NGRC project from NATO, where participants are going to combine efforts to work on design, development, and delivery of a medium multi-role helicopter. Airbus is partnering with RTX Collins Aerospace and Raytheon and MBDA for a 13-month study, which is going to analyze 2 integrated concepts of the next generation military rotorcraft. Their goal is to develop a European solution that's going to fulfill the needs of NATO, helping to guarantee industrial sovereignty of each of these companies that make up NATO for all these European nations, and maintain their key engineering competencies. So we're looking at France, Germany, UK, US, Ireland, and Italy, all being involved in a project that have with all these different partner companies. Each partner is going to contribute to the study in their particular area of expertise, whether it's helicopter design, systems integration, connectivity, weapons, avionics, sensors. And the study is focusing on a high-performance rotorcraft where the concepts are going to be modular and multi-mission, fully interoperable with NATO standards, with a high degree of connectivity. There's a lot going on here.
There is. It's interesting. You meant the organizations you mentioned. I think it was Airbus. You got RTX Collins, MBDA. I know Airbus pretty well. They've got a very collaborative environment that they internally work on when they're designing, improving on existing aircraft. That, to me, this collaboration across the three, you don't want to be throwing it over to the other partner. You want to be working concurrently. And it comes back to a collaborative environment again, putting that platform in place where all parties can be working on this together, from quality to engineering to hand through to manufacturing. So for me, how do you pull them all together is the big thing. Yeah.
Something I think we almost take for granted now, but if you think about it, the idea of being able to work across 5, 6, 7 different borders and being able to have the data real time, where somebody, an engineer makes a change on a computer in the US and everybody over in, the designers working with them in Ireland can see these changes, right?
Yep.
Having that happen real time is something that I think we take for granted, because this is not even technology that existed a decade ago to be able to do this kind of stuff, right? This
And
is
that change can cascade straight into a manufacturing line as well and adjust
Mhm.
equipment to it as well. I think you're right. It's that end-to-end piece that's so critical.
Mhm.
Last one for today. Lockheed Martin awarded a $4.6 million DARPA contract for AI development. Now, a $4.6 million deal for Lockheed Martin isn't a big deal for those guys, but the significance of this is the AI piece of things.
Mhm.
So, this $4.6 million contract from DARPA to develop AI tools for dynamic airborne missions as part of the AI reinforcements program. This initiative aims to enhance modeling and simulation approaches and create dominant AI agents for live, multi-ship, beyond visual range missions, advancing national security technologies. Over an 18-month period, Lockheed will use AI and ML machine learning to develop surrogate models for aircrafts, sensors, electronic warfare, and weapons in dynamic, operationally representative environments. The AIR, so the Artificial Intelligence Reinforcements Program, will improve the speed and predictive performance of baseline models to better reflect the real world performance of DoD systems. Cool stuff.
Yeah, for this, we're looking at a product life cycle when you have advanced technologies. And you've got to make sure that there is reliability, that the robustness of these AI models makes sense in real world scenarios. One thing that
Yep.
we know as Chat GPT has become a big thing. Everyone's learned that sometimes the AI makes mistakes where it takes something as fact or makes up truths that really aren't true. So I
Yep.
think being able, when you're using AI in a development, you're going to have to make sure there's a way to fact check that, and that to know
Are we
that
talking about the presidential election this year or something? Okay. Okay. No, you're right. You're right. You've got making sure the AI is truthful, accurate, etc. And to me, you've got to have rigorous validation and
Mhm.
testing in place. So again, simulation, iterative testing and refinement, integration with your existing systems. You can't just silo it. It now needs to cascade up downstream and into manufacturing as well. So you've got seamless system integration, cross-functional collaboration, so everybody's involved. It's digital continuity through and through, isn't it?
To kind of summarize what we've talked about today, I think what always happens is when you start diving into any portion of the product lifecycle, you end up talking about all of it. But I think the ones that kept coming up today are, you've got to have a good plan for your testing and your simulation. You've got to
Simulation.
have, yeah, it's huge. You've got to have a good collaborative platform, because
Yep.
we're in a world where you are now communicating across international borders in real time.
Yep.
You've
And
got to have good.
And I was going to say, and quality, we touched on quality earlier. And quality is end to end. It doesn't just sit in manufacturing. You want to have it feeding through from your design and engineering as
Yeah.
well. And I guess to encompass all of it, it's that digital continuity, digital thread, but a critical path through the digital thread to give you that speed to manufacturing to customer. Yeah.
So I guess what we're learning here is that every part of your PLM plan is critical.
Critical thread.
And with that, we'll see you all next week.
See you next week.